Buff Nation, what is going on? Hope you guys are having an absolutely fantastic Wednesday evening. No Buff Blitz tonight. Russ is out of town handling some different things, but graciously, I have a rising star in the college football creator universe joining the show tonight. Somebody that I've been wanting to have on the show for a long time, so this means a lot. Joined here by Brian Gregoire of The Era. Before we get started and I introduce Brian, please be sure to go like and subscribe to his page. He's on the way to 1,000 subs. Links in the description. Also, his latest video on Colorado that he published yesterday in the description of the video. But Brian, welcome to the show. Can't wait to talk college football. But before we dive into Colorado and different things like that, would love for you to give background to the audience on who is Brian and what is The Era all about when you visit The Era's YouTube page.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be on here first and foremost, David. This is awesome. I love the channel. I've been following for a while. Love the Colorado content. On The Era, I like to encompass content for all different schools. I like to spread the wealth, but then in my preparation time, I do like to hone in on certain programs. And so you are one of the first sources I come from for Colorado, because Colorado's a rising star themselves right now in the college football world. So I like to pay close attention, and you're my main source of content when it comes to Colorado football. So I just hope you know that. So a little of background on The Era. I started this in March of 2023. Mm-hmm. It was actually on my birthday, March 27th, my 23rd birthday, that I started The Era. And what the vision is essentially is to be a channel that covers college and NFL football from a business standpoint. On there, I don't like to get too high. I don't like to get too low. I like to be entertaining. I like to be informative as well. I just like to be a straight shooter. I want to tell how it is. I also don't want to be a fiery opinion, hot take based guy. I like to assess teams and storylines from a very broad, very all-encompassing perspective. And so that's the goal when it comes to The Era. And I like to talk about everybody.
Yes.
That's my big thing. I talk about everybody. I mean, when I go back and look at the teams I made videos about this year, it's endless. And I've done, of course, Alabama. It's my alma mater. I do a lot of Alabama videos. I've also done Utah. I've done Colorado. I've done Texas A&M. I've done the Bengals. I've done the Colts, the Packers. And the list goes on and on and on. I like to talk about everybody. I've done Texas Tech videos before. Yes. James Madison. I talk about Indiana today. Go give that video a watch. It's really good. But I like to just talk about everybody. And the way that my content schedule works, I like to have about 2 or 3 long form releases per week. Mm-hmm. And then I like to do shorts as well. Just kind of showcase my personality a little bit more. And I like to do prediction videos. It's always a fun way to engage with all different fan bases across the country. But I'm all about getting fans involved and all about delivering that business perspective to people who watch. So definitely go on and subscribe to The Era with Brian Gregoire. I'm originally from Northern New York. I went to college at the University of Alabama. I got both my undergraduate and graduate degrees there. I live in Dallas, Texas now. And The Era is growing and growing and growing. So please go on there and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. I'm trying to build brick by brick a college and NFL football community.
You're on your way, man. And again, one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show and hear your takes and opinions on Colorado was because, of course, this is a Buffs channel. I'm going to be fired up about the Buffs. But what I love about you and your channel, not only are you incredibly prepared and genuine every time you get on and do a video about a specific program, coach, whether it's NFL or college football, but you're my college football expert. You're one of my main guys that I go to. But the passion, the level of enjoyment that you have when you come on there and talk, you bring what I have regarding the Buffs to all of college football. No doubt about it. And that's what I love so much about your channel. Like, you genuinely take an interest in so many different teams, and hearing your perspective, the narratives that you craft every time you drop a video, it's only a matter of time before your channel starts really taking off. So, let's dive in to Colorado, man. Let's
do it.
dive in to Colorado. I put this in the thumbnail of my video. This is something that you talked about and sort of led with on your video yesterday regarding Coach Prime and CU. Coming from somebody who's an alma mater of the University of Alabama, you said Colorado reminds you of last year's Bama team. Break it down for me, man.
So I want to tee this up by saying that I'm not in any way insinuating that this team will, go to the Final Four or go to the Rose Bowl or anything like that. I do want to get that out of the way. It's not supposed to be like a hot take, but this Colorado team reminds me of Alabama from the standpoints that they both hit their low point very early in the season. I feel like every team out there, it's a long season. It's 12 games. You have a high point, you have a low point, regardless of who you are, regardless of if you're undefeated or have 7 losses. There's a high point and a low point. And so much of what builds a championship run is dependent on when that high point and that low point is. Mm-hmm. Alabama last year and Colorado this year, they both hit their low point on week 2. And it was a game that a fair amount of people just expected them to lose. Like, a lot of people expected Alabama to lose to Texas last year, and they did. A lot of people expected Colorado to lose to Nebraska. I did, and it happened. But that was their low point. Both teams got dominated in that week 2 game. I mean, I know Alabama only lost by 10 points in that game last year, but they got dominated in all facets. As line of scrimmage, coverage, they just all facets of the game. They got dominated. And Colorado got their clocks cleaned in Lincoln this year. I mean, that is what it is. But that was their ultimate low point. They've only gotten better and better and better. And it wasn't this instant, flip of a switch either. It's not like, we got this demoralizing loss to Nebraska out of the way. Now let's flip the switch on. No. Same as Alabama last year. That Colorado State game, a team that Colorado is far superior to, mm-hmm. they struggled. Like, it was kind of a sloppy game. They won by multiple possessions, but it was a sloppy game. Like, first and second quarter, you looked at that thing, and the Rams were hanging in there, mm-hmm. but Colorado was able to pull it off, and it just led to gaining more and more and more momentum. The Baylor game was season defining. That is when there's also a certain game too where that inflection point is, yes. where the switch just turns on. For Alabama last year, it was the Ole Miss game, where the switch just flipped on. They were pushed to the ropes. It was a very sloppy game, but they pulled it off. Everyone on the staff looked at each other after the game like, wow, we've got something here. Yeah, did this game give me a damn heart attack? Yeah, absolutely it did. But it made us closer as a team. We escaped with the win. That's what matters. Let's build off of this. That was Colorado against Baylor. They were down by 10 points in the second half of that game. They were pushed to the brink of elimination. They were pushed to the limit. They found a way. They dug in, pulled off the win in overtime, and in a way were able to find their identity more and more. And you just saw this Colorado team get rolling and rolling and rolling. And again, I don't want to neglect the Kansas State loss, because that's right. a thing. But that's also a top 15 team in the nation too. And Colorado came very close to beating them. And I also want to state this too. Preseason, I thought Kansas State was far, far, far superior to Colorado. Mm-hmm. Colorado came very close to beating arguably the best team in the Big 12. They may not be there record-wise, but I think as far as team composition goes,
yes,
Kansas State could be the best. I have to give it to BYU right now, naturally, because they cleaned Kansas State's clock this year. Mm-hmm. But, Kansas State and Iowa State are right there, I'd say, 2 and 3. Like, it's not as far as it seems. One has a loss, one doesn't, but I don't think there's much of a difference. They play the final week of the year. Can't wait to watch that.
Mhm.
But back on to Colorado. Just like Alabama last year, it's a slow build, but it's an intentional build. They get better and better and better each and every single week. And now you're looking at November. That's very manageable, just like Alabama's was last year. You know,
Mhm.
you get certain wins out of the way, and you look ahead, and it's very manageable. You look at Texas Tech, Kansas, Oklahoma State. These are Utah is not nearly the team I thought they were.
No.
This it's a very beat up Utah team, but they're not nearly what I thought they were going to be. And so you look at this upcoming schedule for the Buffs, and it's kind of like they could really do some damage in November. So hit their low point early, but are hitting their high point at the right time. And if Colorado peaks in November, they can very well get into that Big 12 championship and possibly even win the thing, because that's another similarity between Colorado and Alabama last year. Very, very talented rosters.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's just a matter of when it all comes together and a matter of when they find their identity and what that identity is. Colorado has found their strengths
Mhm.
and they've leaned more into that. Colorado is an explosive team, but there's certain components that you need to have as a team if you want to get to a championship game and win one. You have to be good in the trenches. You have to establish tempo with the run game. It's old school, and a lot of people like to neglect that. People love to neglect the trenches and love
Yes.
to neglect the run game. People like to think that run game is just not existent now. You need it to compete for a championship.
Mhm.
Colorado, like when I looked at them very early on this year, they're a very unrefined team. Not good in the trenches at all. No run game. Just
Mhm.
very reliant on Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn downfield. It's just these big pop plays. And
Mhm.
yet puts so much pressure on Shedeur Sanders to just be the guy every game. I watch Colorado. It doesn't feel that way anymore.
No.
Like, yeah, Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn Jr. are there when you need them. But there's several other ways that they can win. The defense has gotten a lot better too.
Yes.
And that was not a thing last year. And so the components that you need to compete for a championship, Colorado has them more than ever this year, and they're leaning more into that identity. I like where this team is heading. It reminds me a lot of Alabama last year, not from the standpoint that they'll go to the Rose Bowl, but from the standpoint that it is not unrealistic that this team can go to Arlington.
Let's freaking go. Yeah,
Yeah.
we need some of that Alabama kind of luck there at the end, like they found to get into the college football playoff. They're like, yeah, you know what? Forget about, well, I guess they're always going to put the SEC title winner in there, but yeah, forget about Georgia, forget about Florida State. Let's put them in there. It would be nice to see the Buffs catch a break here in the Big 12 with the opponents and other conference members that you mentioned. I got a question for you,
Yeah.
Brian, because yeah, you mentioned about how the product, the style of offense, for instance, has developed and changed, throughout the season. Um, it- how was that kind of for Alabama? Because I think I remember right that maybe somewhere at the beginning of the season or in the first half, Jalen Milroe was maybe benched for a game or a game and a half or so. What was the turning point for in Alabama last year and kind of finding their balance and their identity on offense that propelled them through the second half of the season?
Well, we found that there there are several things that Alabama discovered last year, and I just want to preface that this offense never. I don't think it ever really got together consistently.
Hmm.
Like it was a very up and down offense. It was reliant on the explosive play. Alabama relied deeply on that last year. Jermaine Burton hitting him downfield,
Yeah.
some Isaiah Bond hitting him downfield, like Jalen Milroe in that offense. They're very dependent on that. We had a solid run game with Jace McClellan. Um, and we incorporated Jam Miller into that quite a bit last year as well, especially at the end of the year. And Roydell Williams. Roydell Williams is now at Florida State.
Mhm.
Jace McClellan's in the NFL. Jam Miller is still there. Shout out Jam. Um, those guys were a component, but the explosive play was a huge ingredient in the Alabama offense last year. And also just using Jalen Milroe's strengths. I mean, he's a naturally gifted running quarterback. And so just leaning into that more and more. Alabama's offensive line as a unit got better. Alabama's offensive line was putrid for the first couple weeks of the year last year. But it got better. It got more well coached. There are less penalties. There are less blown assignments. It was just it was a better line. It was coached better. Guys knew their role. There was more cohesion in the offensive line. And so it had to do it with a couple adjustments there because Milroe wasn't getting the reads that he wanted. Running backs weren't getting the gaps that they wanted because the offensive line was not doing its job. So it really started with coaching that unit up better, having there be more cohesion, more understanding of what your assignments are.
Yes.
Getting snaps off better. That was an issue for Alabama. It returned later in the season in the Rose Bowl last year, but it was a huge issue against Texas. Got a little better as the year went on, kind of resurfaced as we got later into the season. For what reason, I don't know. But they kind of polished that up a little bit. That allowed the offense to get more into a rhythm. I want to say the main ingredient to Alabama's success last year, and I don't want this to be overlooked, was that defense. That defense kept them in games. That defense won games for Alabama last year. I mean, having Dallas Turner, Jahad Campbell, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Terrion Arnold, Chris Braswell, all those guys on that defense. It was nasty. And I would say, especially after the Ole Miss game, the Mississippi State game, they had their identity. It was a hard-hitting, smash-mouth defense.
Yes.
Amazing at getting stops on 3rd down and 4th down. I mean, you know how energizing that is for a football team. Get off the field on 3rd down, 4th down. I mean, it's galvanizing. Put your helmet back on offense. You're like, all right, let's go kick some ass. And they did that. The defense provided more opportunities for the offense. The offense, what was spotty, was able to capitalize on enough of those opportunities to get wins. It just became a well-oiled machine where one side of the ball was helping the other. And I'm starting to see that out of Colorado this year. The offense is helping the defense. The defense is helping the offense. Colorado's defense is not special by any means, but the offense is good enough.
Yes.
To where it gets the defense rested. It keeps them fresh on their legs so that they can go out and optimize their performance. That's what Alabama did last year. Alabama's offense was not special. If you go look at their stats last year, there was nothing special about the offense. There are many offenses that were a lot better than Alabama's last year. But that defense was special. Top 3. You do not want to go against that defense in November last year. Play complimentary football. That was the name of the game. They got it done.
Yes. Complimentary football, baby. Yeah. It's been so important to see this team be able to have a significant, substantial time of possession. Because our defense is, greatly improved. I think we're finding ourselves in the top half of the Big 12 with points per game given up, which is awesome. And I mean, we had one of the worst defenses in all of FBS football last year. And I think I haven't looked at the national rankings in like a month, but I imagine, man, we've probably made a 60, 70 point or 70 spot jump in terms of our points per game right now, which is just absolutely insane. Credit to Robert Livingston. He's done a good job. And, one other instance with Alabama that I'm reminded of that I'm curious about your opinion on is that you guys had a starting freshman left tackle last year as well, Caden Proctor. Of course, facing SEC, talent every week is a little bit different than, I think this is kind of a down year for the Big 12 when it comes to dominant edge rushers, but that's not to take away anything from what Jordan Seaton's done. He's been by far our highest rated pass blocker on the year as a true freshman, has only given up 3 sacks on the year. And I think he's looking the part, just to put it in perspective, Brian, and definitely from somebody who has watched another high-end left tackle play, from their true freshman season on, what does that take? What kind of caliber of player? How impressive is it to see somebody like Jordan Seaton doing what he's doing right now as a true freshman?
Well, from working with the Alabama football team last summer, I forgot to mention that in the beginning of the video. I interned with Alabama's player development department for several months last year in 2023 when I was still in college, and so I was in the facility every day working with the players, helping out practices, helping out lifts, and so I was able to see what that looks like firsthand. And when it comes to freshman linemen, it's about guys who take their shit seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you're a prospect, you are an unrefined talent. When you're 17, you're fresh 17, 18-year-old freshman coming into college, you are an unrefined player. Oftentimes, linemen come in and they're overweight.
Mm-hmm.
So it's coming in there. You're taking your diet seriously. You're taking your nutrition seriously. Put good in, you get good out. Mm-hmm. And you're following the regiment that your strength and conditioning team gives you to a T. I saw many linemen do it last summer. They got to spend half an hour on the stair climb, spend some time on the elliptical. You have to eat certain things for lunch and for dinner and in certain portions to level out your body's fat and muscle composition. A lot of it comes down to that. And then in practice, there's just mastering the technique. Going out there, yes, showing great work ethic, mm-hmm. Going home, studying your material, knowing what's expected of you in practice, and then getting it done on the practice field. You're a freshman. You are gonna make mistakes on that practice field. You're gonna get scolded at. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. But it's about having the resilience and the mentality to take that in and say, okay, I'm going to use this. I'm going to get better. I'm going to listen to what coach is telling me. I'm going to work on this. I'm going to improve this craft. I'm going to come out and I'm going to be better. That's how that's how Caden Proctor had. That's how he got better. Mm-hmm. He worked to get his body in shape, to get his body right. He was great at tackle last year. He took his shit seriously in practice, made mistakes, learned from them. The same is happening in Colorado right now. You get the right guys in the building, and I think that goes back to Deion's recruiting approach, Deion's approach in the portal right now. I know a lot of people criticize it. It's getting guys in there who are going to have that mentality, mm-hmm. who are all about the CU, all about the Buffaloes. You're going to sacrifice yourself for that team. You're going to give your own practice. You're going to be coachable. You're going to be willing to learn. I think we've seen that with a lot of the guys on Colorado's offensive line this year. You can tell they're taking it more seriously. They're listening. They're putting the work in. They're putting the preparation in. Mm-hmm. And it's showing because that unit is performing so much higher than it was at any point last year. And that's what it comes down to. You win games. I'll never forget Saban always said this during practices. You win games in fall camp. Colorado was doing that this year.
Man, wonderfully said. Yeah, it's, I never really put much stock in like spring game performances, whatever. But, Jordan Seaton, he was one of those guys that was here as an early enrollee, which is great. And, just seeing how he's performed, even starting the season versus kind of what we saw in spring ball, I think it just shows the dedication to the craft, like you were pointing out.
Now, I want to say that too about early enrollees.
Yeah,
it's the best possible thing for somebody because you get there in January, you got those extra 4 months because when you're, I'll never forget being, I transferred to Alabama at 21.
Okay.
So I was already 3 years older than, freshmen would be. Mm-hmm. You're going there. You're still practically a high schooler. In most cases, you're going to a new state, mm-hmm. new surroundings, new people. It takes a couple months to get used to that. Mm-hmm. So when you go there in January, you got those first couple months, January, February, March, you get used to your surroundings, you get used to Tuscaloosa, you get used to the staff there at Alabama, you get used to the university, the people there, the culture. There could be a shock there. By the time fall camp comes around, you're acclimated to all that, and it's a focus on football. There's a huge difference between the guys that came in January and the guys that came in June. The guys that came in June, you're getting used to Tuscaloosa. You're getting used to the program. You're jumping into college classes, and you're trying to learn a playbook, and you're trying to prove yourself to a new team. Them guys that came back in January, like Seton did, you've already done all that.
Yeah.
And so it puts you that much further ahead.
Yes. And that's definitely been something that our staff has targeted, is just guys who our high school class, wasn't big last year. I think it might double this year compared to last year, but definitely having guys that are going to be available to come in January, it's a huge priority. And yeah, like him, Draylon Miller, he was another guy that I believe was here in the spring, and we've seen nice role from him. Michael Welsh, he's been out a little bit, but he's had some big time impact runs for CU and a couple touchdowns on the year. I want to ask you, Brian, kind of bringing things back into what's left for Colorado, on the horizon to finish out the year. I'll just ask you this generally. You can take it whatever direction you want. What are the paths? How does Colorado make this college football playoff?
That's the burning question. And I'm going to say this right now. It all starts in Lubbock. It's great to look on to the end of the season, but being somebody who I have a deep appreciation for the history of college football. And I know you do too, David. And I know that that Lubbock is a very scary place to play in November. Just ask the Texas Longhorns back in 2008. It is a very scary place to play. That's where dreams come to die. It is. I'm putting that. Texas Tech lives for this moment, just like South Carolina lives for this moment. The time for somebody to come into your house and you to destroy their season. They want nothing more than to do that to you in 2 weeks. So I just hope Colorado's ready. Nonetheless, I think Colorado is equipped to win that game. I do. And when it comes to Colorado, building off of that, it's week by week. It's 0-0 going into every game, and it's week by week, win by win. Just stacking wins, winning out, doing the things necessary to get wins, and doing them completely and thoroughly and consistently. Win out, you win these final 4 games. Okay, now we're 10-2. I firmly believe. I was in the office the other day with some of my friends, just looking at these remaining schedules for the top 4 teams in the Big 12, because it's very clustered at the top right now. You got BYU, you've got Iowa State, you've got Kansas State, you got Colorado. BYU's schedule, I think they're going to get in.
Yeah.
I think that they're as close of a lock to getting in. Now, again, 2024 gives me 07 vibes, so crazy things can happen. But just looking at their schedule right now and their percent chance to win each game remaining, I think BYU of the 4 has by far the best chance to play in Arlington.
Agreed.
I think the second best chance to go is Kansas State. Because I think pound for pound, they're the second best team in the Big 12. And I'd say they've got the second easiest schedule. Granted, they have Iowa State at the end of the season, but their talent compared to their schedule, I think it's the second most manageable. And then I have Colorado.
Yes.
Because I think that I expect Colorado to win each of their remaining games. I would favor them to win each of their remaining games. Texas Tech, Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State. I think they win out. I think it's manageable. And then you've got Iowa State. Iowa State's a little more challenging. They're undefeated right now. They may have 1 loss. They may have 2 losses. And the thing of it is, if they both have 1 loss, it's going to be a toss-up between you and Iowa State.
Yes.
if and heaven forbid if they lose 2 games, you could very well be seeing a BYU, Colorado, Big 12 championship right down I-30 here at Arlington. If that's the case, again, Colorado needs to win that game.
Mm-hmm.
And then, unfortunately, Colorado is in a position where they do have to, because they have 2 losses, they do have to rely on other teams to lose.
And Kansas State has the tiebreaker.
Kansas State has the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
They need to rely on other teams to lose.
Yeah.
So they're in that position of dependence that you never want to be in. But to be fair, I didn't expect Colorado to be anywhere remotely near this point right now. I predicted Colorado to be 4-8 again. Looking at those points, I thought y'all were going to be 4-8 again. And so just being in this conversation right now, to me, is amazing. You're already bowl eligible. Yeah. Substantial growth from last year. This is definitely something to build off of. This has been a great year for Coach Prime and the Colorado Buffs. Yeah. As far as the playoff goes, they need certain things to go their way. But we're in a year where that's not out of the realm of possibility. 2024 is a crazy year. A lot of the SEC still has to play each other. And there's been a trend going on in the SEC with teams beating up on each other. Mm-hmm. Kind of self-elimination. If that continues to be a thing, Colorado could sneak in.
Yeah.
I think you're in a positive situation where you're only going to get one ACC team.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it.
Miami's going to be the only – nobody else deserves a spot. It's either going to be Miami or Clemson.
Yeah.
Clemson – and the only way there could be 2 in is if Miami loses to Clemson in the ACC championship, because Miami could sneak back in. Clemson's not going to sneak back in. Clemson needs to win out. So the only team that could have 1 loss in that conference or afford another loss and sneak in that conference would be Miami because of their resume. Clemson can't do that. Loss of Georgia was mortifying. So that's a huge break, having only 1 ACC spot. You're going to have 1 G5 team. We're going to confront this at the end of this podcast. The smack talk you were giving my Boise State Broncos.
Oh, yeah.
That's my G5 team. We're gonna have a discussion about that. But they're like they'll probably Ashton Janty and the boys will probably sneak into a 12 seed.
Yes.
So you look at that; those spots will be occupied. The Big Ten is top heavy. You've got Oregon, you've got Ohio State, you've got Penn State. We're gonna see how Penn State shakes out with Ohio State this weekend. That's a huge game for you, Davis. It's a huge game. I think you need Ohio State to win that game to knock Penn State out of the picture.
Yes.
Things have to shake out a certain way. You don't want to see 3 Big Ten teams in. You want them to beat up on each other. The more of those if you can just get 1, that'd be great. You're probably gonna get 2. But if you could just get 1 Big Ten team, that would be substantial. It's a hard path to get to, and again, like you don't want 5 SEC teams in. If you can get 4 or 3, that would be great. That's gonna be harder to come by because naturally, I think Georgia gets in. I think Texas gets in. I think there's a reasonable shot Tennessee gets in. I think Alabama can get in, and then you're talking Texas A&M, LSU maybe on the cusp, maybe Ole Miss. There's a lot of those teams that are still in the mix. Upsets could knock them out. You've got Ole Miss, Arkansas this weekend. You've got Texas A&M, South Carolina this weekend. They're going to the cockpit. Who knows how that could shake out? Pull hard for the Cox this Saturday.
Yeah.
You just want self-elimination in these other conferences.
Yeah.
Get that? It'll set Colorado up. You're in a position of dependence, but you're also in a position that I don't think anybody except for true Colorado fans would expect you all to be in.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need things to go. You need things to go your way, and in minimal margin of error, you need things to shake out.
Yes, and this year it's felt special in that regard. We usually have this phrase that trends titled, buff shit or buff luck, and all these things. But I really do feel like buff shit, it's been different this year for the most part, man. Like when you talk about turning points of a season, I was at the Stanford game last year with my wife. That sucked. And you see, we never recovered from that to finish out the year. But juxtaposed that game with this year, Baylor, having that improbable comeback at the end, it is just, I think it's really helped the team kind of reach this next level. It was a galvanizing point for the team to believe and lock in.
Oh yeah.
And can we get some more of this new Buff luck down the stretch? That's the question. Along with, like you said, going 1-0 every week. With what we have remaining on the schedule, I almost feel like it's something going back to the BCS days where you have to win with style points in order to get placed in one of these big games and or to get placed in the national championship if there are a handful of one-loss teams. I almost feel like not only does Colorado need to go out and win, they should be, of course, you want to just gun for the win, but you want to go in there gunning for domination. You want to put on a show, and I agree with you. I think that this could be a year in which there's one ACC team. Maybe there's less SEC teams than normally expected. I came into this season saying the Big 12 is getting their conference winner in, and that is it. But now, I'm starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel that maybe there's a different scenario that could happen to where Colorado doesn't need to make the Big 12 title game and win the Big 12 in order to make the college football playoff. If some things can go in their favor and they got the style points to do so. Right now, we're still one of the most top viewed teams in the country, the most viewed team out west in the Western time zones, ahead of everybody, ahead of USC, Oregon, all the schools out there, BYU. And coming down, looking at the college football playoff committee last year, that was kind of the thing with Florida State. Did their record, they deserved to be in, but the product was so ugly there at the end of the year when Jordan Travis was out. They just couldn't do it, I think, from a business perspective, and that's what changed. What are your thoughts on that, about maybe Colorado making this committee, kind of question maybe the norms or assumptions on what other schools from that aren't champions from their conferences getting in? Colorado disrupting that.
Well, Colorado is going to present a real scenario for the college football playoff of kind of like the angel and the devil on the shoulder.
Yeah.
They really are. There's going to be kind of interfering viewpoints when it comes to Colorado. It's going to put the committee between a rock and a hard place. There's going to be kind of conflicting interests, motivations here, because on one hand, the committee wants Colorado to get in. Don't get me wrong, because that viewership, those ratings, the money they would make would be off the charts. Every Colorado video I've made has been an absolute banger. Colorado, it's still my highest viewed video ever. I got 15,000 views, my highest ever from a Colorado video last year. That's my highest. Ref, they beat TCU last year. Is my highest viewed video,
which you predicted, by the way.
I did.
Predicted.
I did.
I remember.
I think I did. That was that game was absolute insanity. Right down I-30 here. But yeah, from a brand standpoint, the CFP wants Colorado in. It's good for the product on television. It's good for viewership. They want them in. So they're going to do everything in their power to get Colorado in. There are certain teams that are going to get that support. They're going to get that backing from the CFP. You want an Alabama in. You want Ohio State in. You want a Notre Dame in.
Yep.
You want in Oregon in.
Yeah.
People, or Texas, you want the Longhorns in. People are going to watch their brands. USC, people want to see it. Other teams out there, I don't want to throw strays at anybody, but like your Oklahoma States, your Iowa States, your Stanfords, Michigan State, they're going to care a little. Washington, they're going to care a little less.
Yes.
I mean, look at how much Washington had to do last year to actually gain respect and get in. Because at the end of the day, their team has to be perfect to get in. They need things to work out for them. The CFP is going to help Alabama out. They're going to help Notre Dame out. There's other teams that have to prove it to them because they're not like they're not predestined favorites. Colorado is one. They want them in because of what it will do for viewership, what it will do for revenue, for CFP, for ESPN. They'll be through the roof. On the flip side, here's where the conflicting viewpoints come in. Colorado, like Ole Miss, has a huge blemish. And that's something that the CFP refuses to overlook because they've let teams in that have those blemishes in the past. And they've regretted it. Colorado's lost to Nebraska, even though it feels like a lifetime ago. You can't overlook it. It's still a 28-10 loss to a team that's barely above 500. Ideally, you don't want to let a team like that in. Ole Miss, like you have to be nearly perfect to get in. You have to really win the committee over. You got to woo them. Ole Miss has to do the same thing. And unlike Colorado, Ole Miss isn't one of those brands that the CFP is going to help. Like they're a prove it brand. They need to prove it to the college football playoff. They're not going to naturally help them. They've never been there before. You know, this is Ole Miss's goal is to get there for the first time.
Yeah.
But they have that loss to Kentucky at home.
Oh, I know, man.
And that they never, ever, ever, ever should have lost.
No.
And they did. And it's a huge blemish. And you can't overlook it. And it just sits there and sits there and sits there. As much as you try to repair your reputation and make yourself look better in the eyes of the committee, that's always there. So Ole Miss needs to kick ass. Colorado needs to kick ass in November, or else you're not going to get in. That's it. You need to overcorrect yourself so much when you have a loss like that, regardless of how long ago it was. You need to do so much to overcorrect yourself because it's a massive blemish. It is. Yeah. That is what it is. It's not over for either one of those teams, but you also like there's other teams that have massive wins on their resume. Colorado didn't really have that ranked opponent win. Like they don't have that huge upset win.
No.
Alabama is going to get help because they have that Georgia win. Yes. When you have that hallmark win on your schedule, they're going to help you out. Oregon beating Ohio State. Oregon has like a 91% chance to make the playoff. Like the wheels have to fall off of Oregon to not get in.
Yeah.
So that's huge wins, huge losses on the resume. The CFP evaluates that a lot, but they also evaluate your brand. So Colorado is in this weird kind of middle gray area when it comes to their chance to get in. But it's all about controlling what you can control. Going one game a week. I know it's coach speak, but it's what you got to do. You got to be in the present moment. You've got to kick Texas ass, and then you have to go kick Utah's ass, and that's really what it comes down to. I think if you can do that consistently, the CFP will have no choice but to let y'all in. But things have to go your way, and you have to capitalize on each and every single opportunity. No margin for error.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. And it's fun being able to just talk about what it would take to get there, man. That we're in striking distance, we're in range, and it's going to be fun, man, to see how this team comes out and finishes the season. I think would be great. Now, there are some other general college football questions that I just kind of want to ask you, but let's move on to this topic that you mentioned where we might be split on a little bit. That's always fun.
Yeah.
Boise State. You want to get into the G5 spot for the college football playoff. You want to talk about, I know you have that Boise State photo in your normal background that you do, of the Fiesta Bowl. And what was that, 2005? Give it to me, man. Make the case for Boise State, and why don't you throw in there where you got your Heisman vote going right now, if you have
Well,
one?
first and foremost, let me grab something here.
Oh gosh.
Hold on. This. I haven't broken this out yet because it's still hot as hell here in Texas.
It definitely is hot. I've had to become used to sweating yet again.
Yep, I have a Boise State sweatshirt. I wear this all the time. This is my G5 team. I've loved the Broncos since Kellen Moore.
Let's go. Let's go. Jared Zabransky.
Oh, you bet your sweet bippy. That was a that was a hell of a team.
Dan Hawkins. No, we don't mention his name here. Dan Hawkins. No.
I love it. But as far as Boise State's chances for the playoffs this year, I think they're making a really convincing case for themselves because they've been dominant in conference play. They dominate in games they should dominate. You knew UNLV was going to be their biggest challenge, going to Vegas on the road. It was a very up and down game. Like UNLV was dominating time of possession and the line of scrimmage early in that game. Mm-hmm. Boise State made some adjustments. They were shutting Ashton Janty out, but he started to get going a little bit. Boise State capitalized on some opportunities on offense, and they were able to pull off the second half. It was kind of sloppy for both teams.
Exciting, nonetheless.
It was exciting. Boise State thugged it out. They did what they need. They went on the road, won a tough road game in Vegas, remained undefeated in conference play. Another thing that helped Boise State out, they were 3 points away from beating the number one team in the country on the road in a night game, in a primetime game. That's something that has to be considered. They came just as close as Ohio State did to beating Oregon. So that is a wild environment to go into, Autzen Stadium, against one of the most well-coached teams in the nation, one of the most talented teams in the nation in Oregon.
Yes.
And they almost beat them. Boise State's a dog. I mean, if you ask me, there is a massive gap between Boise State and the second best G5 team. They would destroy Navy. They would destroy Army. I love the Armed Forces teams. Boise State would splatter them across the field right now. Memphis, they'd eat them up and spit them out. Boise State is a bona fide Power 4 team. It's a matter of time before they get elevated to the Big 12, to where they're playing y'all every year.
I was going to ask you that. Do you think their stay in the Pac-12 is going to be short?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're better than that.
Yeah.
They're just a better program than that. I mean, Boise State has been a consistent performer since the mid-2000s. That little drop off in the late 2010s, but they're always in the conversation. They pop up on the top 25 every year. I mean, this is one of the best, most fine-tuned programs in America. I mean, you even break it down, like, it's just a great organization up there. I mean, Jeremiah Dickey, their athletic director, he spearheads this whole thing. Boise State is just buttoned up, and it's going to be only a matter of time before they're in the Big 12. I firmly believe that. And you look at the rest of their schedule this year, I think they win out. They have by far the best chance to win the Mountain West.
Yes.
And I think that they will be the team to get that 12 seed. And of any G5 team out there, they are most well-equipped to go into a Power 4 team's house, into their atmosphere, and pull off the unthinkable. And if there's any of them out there that are suited to do so, of going into an Ohio State, going into an Alabama, going into a Miami, and getting a win, it's Boise State. Not saying it'll happen, but if there's anybody out there that could do it, it is most definitely Boise State. And I know you asked about my Heisman pick.
Yes.
You're gonna hate this. It goes past right now. He's I mean, I grew up with Alabama running backs. Trent Richardson, Mark Ingram, he's surpassing them. Derrick Henry, he's surpassing what they did. And he's doing what's unthinkable. And this is in the G5. You know, like he's getting that kind of recognition on a G5 team. The guy is something special. Cream rises at the top. Give me Ashton Janty.
Oh man. Well, y'all, again, be sure to go subscribe to Brian Gregoire, even though he likes Ashton Genty. That's okay. This is a safe space for different opinions. But I have to say, Brian, you made a pretty convincing argument, I think, for me to be okay with a G5 team making the playoff this year. Now, if it comes down to Colorado's just right outside the bubble, because we got to make sure we're giving one to Boise State, you might hear me get on here and be a little upset, right? But I think that's very fair. You know, if they can almost knock off Oregon in Autzen, who's to say they can't play spoiler in the college football playoff? I would love to see Boise State move on to a Power Four conference, because I would, outside of them, how you put it, I don't know if there's any other program out right now that deserves an automatic bid just because they're playing well in the G5.
Yeah, I mean, there's
yeah.
You look at the rest of it. I mean, just consider it like would you want to see Army go to Tuscaloosa and play Alabama? Would you want to see Memphis go on the road and play Penn State? No, it would be a slaughter. Boise State is composed to where they can go up there and contend because they have the athletes to do it as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very overlooked program. But they have the athletes, they have the coaching, they have the support to get it done. They're a unicorn. It blows my mind that they're not Power 4 yet. But I think that it's only a matter of time. There's freak programs out there. TCU was always that before they got elevated to the Big 12. I mean, they had the same story of growth, you know, WAC to Mountain West to Big 12. I think it's only a matter of time for Boise State. I mean, there's only so. But Boise State has done this for so many years. I mean, remember going back to my elementary school years, beating Georgia, beating Virginia Tech, beating Oregon multiple times. And they just continue to do it. I mean, almost beating Oregon this year, that is a crazy feat. Mm-hmm. That truly is.
Mm-hmm. It is impressive. Something that we didn't come close to last year at all. But I got to ask you this, Brian. I got some general college football questions for you.
Yeah.
We can kind of rapid fire these, or, you know, you can kind of take as long as you want to break these down as you want. I got to start with something that I have, you know, called the best story in college football, you know, from like a shit posting perspective, and shocking. I've never seen a number 10 ranked team coming into the season play as badly as Florida State this year. Big buyout for a coach that they just extended. Where does Florida State go from here?
Well, I'm not a fire the coach guy. I've always thought that that's like a Band-Aid solution to a much larger problem. And I think that you have to just conduct more internal assessment. There's you can always improve. This Florida State is going to be a case study for NIL and the transfer portal because they've been very reliant on it these past 2 years. It can either work out for you or it can't, because when you're heavily reliant on the transfer portal, you're bringing a bunch of guys who are very talented, but they don't know each other. You don't know how they're going to gel. You don't know how they're going to congenialize. Mm-hmm. It worked out for Boise State, or not for Boise State. It worked out for Florida State last year. It hasn't at all this year. And so Florida State is going to be an interesting kind of case study because you're going to go back and you're going to see that they brought in just a bunch of names this year. And it's just not fitting together. And that's when it comes to strategy and how you construct a team in the future. you're going to look at Florida State's mistakes and you're going to say never again. Because right now it's more about the talent that you're bringing in and not as much about the Florida State brands. In the future, there's going to be more of a focus on assessing the fit of certain guys and the culture that you're trying to breed at a school. I think Mike Norvell learned this. I think that he took a huge swing with bringing a bunch of transfers this year, and it flopped big time. It's one of the most talented teams. It's probably, I'd say, one of the most it's a top 10, top 15 team when it comes to talent. And it's just not delivering at all. They also had very mortifying losses early in the season that stuck with this team.
Yes.
But they're going to be a case study. That's what Florida State is going to be. I think this is a year that you just put behind you. You do a lot of internal assessment. You do a lot of examination of your culture, your approach, how you're going about constructing this program, what you want your vision to be. And then you just go back to the drawing board and go back to business next year. Florida State is not going to continue to operate at this level. Mike Norvell is a great coach. I think that he'll continue to steer the program in the right direction. Sometimes good programs have down years, so don't count Florida State out in the long run. You did
bring him back from 1-11 once, right?
Yeah. I mean, how many teams have you seen bounce back from that? It can happen. It's possible. But it's Florida State. We have not seen. We've only been in the NIL era for 4 years. No, 3 years. 2021 to 2024. It's only been 3 years. There's not much sample size. So everybody's learning right now. Mike Norvell learned a lesson, leaned heavily into the transfer portal. He got burned by it. He's going to scale back. You mean to tell me that people in different organizations aren't studying this team? They are. Yeah. And they're learning. And I think you're going to see everybody approach the transfer portal and NIL differently because of Florida State.
I got another big-time program question for you. Ohio State. Definitely some close calls this year. Look a little vulnerable than, maybe what we've seen in the past. What's your gauge right now for Ryan Day in his future?
Ohio State's got to figure it out. These teams are way too talented to not be playing in national championship games. I'm just being honest. I'm somebody that I like to give teams grace. I like to give teams a very long time to develop new head coaches. I like to give them a while to get everything in place. I was very patient with Miami. A lot of people were bailing on Miami after Mario Cristobal's first several years. I said, give it time, let this thing develop. Now they're undefeated.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to get. I'm like that with Auburn right now. It looks terrible. Everybody is selling their Hugh Freeze stock. I'm like, just give it a chance. Just let it. It's in a very
hard thing to ask Auburn fans to do.
They're not patient people at all. Trust me, I was in the same state as them for 3 years. They're not patient people at all. Just give it time. It will work out. You just have to let things develop. Ohio State, there's certain teams that hold to a different standard. That's my standard for Auburn because they haven't been there in a while. That's my standard for Miami because they hadn't been there since the 2000s. They had this 2017 year that was kind of a fluke. They hadn't really been there consistently since I was a baby. Ohio State is in a different situation because they have had top-tier talent for the past 15 years, especially since Ryan Day's been there. Look at the guys that have come off of this team. I mean, you're talking guys of the likes of Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, these are absolute dogs they've had on
JSN.
JSN. It's unbelievable the guys that have been on this team and haven't been to a national championship. Granted, they came very close with Georgia several years ago, but at some point you've got to get there because you're just as talented as Alabama. You're just as talented as Georgia. Michigan they were much more talented than Michigan last year. There's no reason why Michigan should have won that game. Ohio State was favored, and they should have won. You've got to start to capitalize on these games. It becomes one too many. The Oregon game, okay. You've got to win out. That's it. The expectation is different for you because there, as far as talent goes, there's you in Georgia, and there's Texas, and then there's everybody else. Nobody else except for the Bulldogs has that level of talent on the football field week in and week out. Ohio State, you got to figure it out. You've got to win out. And I'm not one of those guys that says that. Like I'm not a championship or bust guy. I hate that statement. I think it's stupid. It's people that don't play on teams, don't work in sports, that say stuff like that.
Yeah.
The championship or bust. It's to me, it's a fantasy. But Ohio State is the closest thing to actually being there. Yes. Because they're so incredibly talented. And I'm not for firing a coach that's won as many games as Ryan Day, who has as high of a winning percentage as Ryan Day has had. But you've got to give it context. You got to look at what he has versus his competition versus the opportunities he's had. Ohio State has let a lot slip these past several years. So I think if they don't go past like the round of 8 this year, I think you have to really consider maybe making a move. Because that's just what the stakes are for this team.
Yeah. The expectations. They're an exception compared to, like you said, the rest of the country. Essentially,
there's an expectation for you when you're Georgia, when you're Ohio State, when you're Alabama. There's an expectation like, oh, these fans are impatient. They're freaking. No, there is a different standard for those 3 teams than there is for your Utahs and your USCs and your Virginia Techs. There's a different standard. It is what it is.
Yeah. I had a friend bring up the idea, Mike Vrabel's out there. That could kind of be interesting if they decide to.
Love Mike Vrabel.
Yeah. Like, I think that would be pretty fun to watch. But let's wrap up here with one more question, Brian. Right now, who you got, if you have one, as your favorite right now this week, today, Wednesday night on Halloween, or it's Halloween tomorrow? Yeah. Yeah. Halloween Eve. Who is your favorite to win the national title this year, and why?
It's tough because it all relies on November.
Yeah.
November is the teller of truth. It really is.
I like
November is the teller for college football. November is where true identities get exposed. And so it's tough to make a prediction right now. This team's been a little wonky at points, but I think it's still the most dominant team. It's the most talented team, and it's the most well-coached team in college football. They have all 3 things going for them. It's the Georgia Bulldogs. Don't overthink this thing. Their loss to Alabama, as an Alabama fan, was an absolute fluke. If that game is played again, Georgia wins. If the SEC championship is played again last year, Georgia wins. Georgia's a better team than Alabama, and they probably should have won that game. I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to be honest. They dominated Texas on the road on ESPN's Texas Takeover. They had the F1 race on the next day.
Yeah.
College game day in Austin. They dominated Texas in that atmosphere, and mind you, they played a really sloppy game.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
they played a really sloppy game against Texas, and they still won in that dominant fashion.
Yeah.
So I think Georgia's a team that only has 1 loss, and they still haven't even played their best football yet.
Yeah, and they've been there, man.
And there's just something about being there. Kirby Smart is the most tenured championship caliber coach in college football right now.
Yeah.
I trust Kirby Smart way in that Georgia program way more than I trust anybody now. It was different when Saban was in. I would still be rocking with Alabama right now if Saban was there.
Yeah.
But with him gone, I'm a guy. I trust certain teams. I trust certain people, and there's other teams I do not trust at all. Georgia's the team that I trust to get there. They're my preseason prediction to win it all, and I'm sticking with it.
Yeah. I love it, man. I love it. Well, Brian, thank you again. This hour just absolutely flew by, and we'll definitely have to get you back on the show this college football season. Again, guys, thank you everybody for tuning in. If you could smash the like and subscribe, we're on our way to 10,000 subs now, which is just insane to even think about and say. And then please go subscribe again to Brian Gregoire over at The Era in the description of this video. As we wrap up, where can people find you, and any videos on the horizon that we should check out, as well as ones that you have posted recently for viewers to go find.
So you can find me at The Era with Brian Gregoire. I'm going to write it in the group chat right now because my last name is very confusing to spell out. So I'm just going to put it in right there. You just copy and paste this, put it into YouTube, and there it is.
Perfect.
So go on there, subscribe. I really appreciate it. I have weekly videos, long form video shorts. I also have interviews with professionals in the sports space. Like I interview people in sales, people in compliance, people in marketing, and that's destined for people who want to break into the sports industry. Because I work in sales for the Cowboys right now, and I'm all helping people get involved in the industry and getting plugged in. So that's why I put those interviews out there. I'm all for engaging when it comes to that standpoint. As far as future videos go, I put an Indiana video out tonight. Go watch that. It's about why Indiana is America's team. I'll be making little shorts predictions this weekend. And next week, there'll be a video out next Monday, next Tuesday, as always. That'll be dependent on what happens this weekend. A lot of my content for the following week depends on what happens on the weekend. I react to what happens, and I make videos based on some of the themes that emerge from the weekend. I'll also be going live with my friend Luke Close next Tuesday for the first college football playoff rankings release next Tuesday, the 5th. And I'll be going live with Zeke Wager. I think we're looking at Packers and Lions for Sunday, going live for that game. It'll be a live stream, so go hop on that as well. But thank you for having me, David. This was awesome. I appreciate you so much. And you're fantastic what you're doing here. Please subscribe to David. He's the man.
Oh, man. Well, thank you so much. You're too kind. Shout out to everybody in the chat. We didn't talk any Aggies. I hate the Aggies, but we need to talk about the Aggies at another point. And shout out to everybody in the chat. Coach Barry, sorry I didn't get to your chats, but I'll be back talking, Colorado tomorrow. Again, guys, please be sure to smash that like and subscribe. Greatly appreciate it. Brian, again, thank you so much for your time. We'll get together again soon. Guys, have a wonderful evening. And as always, Sco Buffs.
Sco Buffs, baby.